Welcome back. It's day 27 of the 30-day challenge, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I have been. Today, we're going to be working toward forearm balance, which is an inversion. And if you've never done it, it's totally fine. You can do everything up until forearm balance. You can attempt forearm balance. You can skip it, but you'll basically be given the tools to work on that pose and eventually go up into it if you wish. So we're going to do a lot of prep work, and beginning in a seated position, you can grab something to sit on for hero pose if you like to pad your shins, unfold the blanket. And of course, if your sitting bones don't come down directly, you'll want to take support between the sitting bones. So this is our knees together, feet sitting right outside the hips pose. It's one of the really most effective poses you can do. And so a lot of teachers I know include it in their classes every single time, and I usually do as well. So we're going to begin here. Just make sure you've aligned your knees. You see your kneecaps have four corners. They're all looking straight ahead, and your toes are pointing straight back, and your small toes are sitting down as much as your big toes are. Those are the main alignment points. So take some time to adjust the tailbone in, the shoulders back. Try to anchor into the outer shins, the outer feet, the small toes. And then we'll come into Purvatasana. So we're going to open up the armpits and extend the arms, binding the hands and taking the arms up. Really try to get the elbows straight. Big piece of all of our inversions is the action of the upper back moving into the chest. When we go upside down, a lot of times the opposite wants to happen. So really imprinting this movement of the upper back is essential. Using also the extension of your arms to bring a sense of lightness and length to your torso. Another piece that we really need to have going strongly if we're going to invert with integrity. Go ahead and reverse to the alternate interlock position of your fingers, whatever is the less preferred one, and take the arms up. Take the hands any amount back that you can to improve that openness of your chest and the support of your shoulder blades moving into the chest. Breathing deeply. Try to really evenly press the palms up. If you look up, you might notice that you tend to fall short around the thumbs. That's where we want to give a little extra emphasis. And then go ahead and bring your arms down. Relax your arms, extend your arms, and maybe do a couple rotations. We'll come into our Garudasana arms, which are our eagle arms. And this is another piece of forearm balance that we can kind of imprint. We have this shape with our arms that's kind of 90 degree. And this pose helps us to open the upper back a lot and to keep the chest open. So with your 90 degree elbows, you're going to take the left elbow underneath the right, and join the hands or grab your shoulders. And then just like we've done a few times in this challenge, you're trying to keep the chest broad and the upper back really opening nicely. With every in-breath, a chance to slightly lift the elbows. Because your arms are kind of blocking your view, you might close the eyes here. Go ahead and release, unhook the arms and just change to the opposite crossing of the elbows, modified or joining the hands. Little crack in the window, just opening to breath, opening the body to some prana, some energy, creating space, expansion and extension in the body. Go ahead and release the elbows, slowly unwrap the arms. And again, just taking a Shavasana arm, maybe a little bit of movement with that. We'll come into our Garudasana arms now, which is the cow pose. And staying in hero if you can sustain this pose, otherwise you can take a seated position. We're going to come into the left arm high, the right arm low, and if you need a strap, you can use a strap to join your hands. Otherwise, you're locking the hands together directly. You're trying to create dynamic energy between the elbows, so lengthening the elbows apart, both elbow tips moving gently back, the tailbone moving in, really reaching up strongly through that top elbow and strongly down through the bottom elbow, keeping the head really right above the spine. It's important because our heads do tend to push forward here. So keeping your head back, and even if it means you're pushing a little bit on that top arm, that's okay. We're gonna change out to the other side. So once you release the hands, again, extend the arms, maybe a little bit of some movement, exploring how the movement might release some of the tension of that pose. And then we'll come into the right arm high, the left hand low, and either connecting with a strap or joining the hands directly. Three more breaths here. Good. So one of the most essential poses, go ahead and release, for our inversions is downward facing dog. So if your downward facing dog is not your favorite, it's difficult, it's hard to hold, it's probably a sign you want to work on that before you start to attempt or expect perfect inversions. So and there's ways you can work on down dog if it's troublesome for you, so that you can befriend the pose, you can have more support until the pose becomes more forthcoming, more enjoyable, more sustainable. So that's the whole kind of idea of the Iyengar practice, is we use support until we no longer need it, so that the body learns the right actions rather than kind of doing the coping approach, which is not really ideal. So we are going to come into downward facing dog now. So go ahead and clear your mat. It's also a pose that's really wonderful to take after a long hero pose, which we just did, because it opens the backs of your knees and helps you kind of offset some of the tension from that pose. So go ahead and place the forefingers wide. Your thumb should not be their full distance from where they could be. I'm going to move back so you can see mine. So the thumb joint is not meant to be fully extended away from the index, about half of that distance. Your middle fingers are the forward pointing fingers. Your knees are under the hips, curl the toes underneath, and exhale, extend the legs. But imagine you're wearing stilettos. So don't begin by pressing heels down. That's the very last action. Begin by pulling your hips up away from the wrists, creating one streaming flow of energy from the wrists to the hips. Eventually, when you start the pose, you have more of a peak at the shoulders, from the wrist to the shoulder to the hip. As you develop the pose, you have more of a valley. So how we create the valley is we take the shoulder blades into the front body. We soften into those shoulders, and we keep using the extension of the hips, lifting away from the wrists, and then release the heels down without losing any of that. Tighten your quads, press the leg bones back, roll the inner knees back, squeeze the outer knees in, suck the low belly toward the small of your back, and imagine you're holding pencils in your hip creases. You should have that sharp of a bend, like the letter V upside down, not the letter U upside down. 5 more breaths, ears between the arms. And on this 5th one, place your left knee down and step your right foot forward. Wardrobe malfunction here, just straightening up the pants. All right, so you're in this lunging stance. We're still working with chest opening. It's a big piece of this pose. We did some of that yesterday. Hands behind your back, interlock. Roll your shoulders back. Pull your hands apart like you're holding a big, heavy stone or a brick. And then shine the breastbone up toward the ceiling. Shift your weight forward. Let your right knee advance beyond the ankle line. Let your left hip flexor yawn open. Keep moving the tailbone toward the front body. Keep pulling your hands toward the floor. And rather than jamming your shoulder blades together, coil the inner tips toward the front body, the outer tips toward the back body even more. Good, go back to downward facing dog. Place the right knee down, step the left foot forward. Alternate interlock of your hands, so whatever is least favored in the body, do that one. Shoulders back. Pull your hands heavily toward the floor. Shift your weight forward. Coil the inner shoulder blades forward. Lengthen the back of the neck. Try not to collapse or crease the neck. Keep the line of energy flowing right up through the top of your head. Open the front right hip flexor. Extend it. Forearm balance is not a back bend, but it's almost a back bend. So we really need to open the front body. And you'll see what I mean when we get into the forearm balance. Good. Pull back, come back to downward facing dog. Raise your right leg, step the right foot forward and through, ground the left foot, sweep yourself into warrior two, and then run the left hand down your thigh, turn the right palm open, and come into proud warrior. Even though you can't see right knee, feel that it's tracking with the toe line. You might be able to sense if your knee is drifting. I'm going to show you in the camera. In, for most of us it's in, so magnetize it out. Specifically, it's tracking with the second toe. Big windmill back to your mat, pivoting off the back heel, stepping back to downward facing dog. Raising the left leg, stepping it through. Pivot and ground the right foot, sweeping the right arm up, opening up to warrior two. Proud warrior. Extending the sides of the trunk. Very important in inversions because we don't want to telescope the torso with all the weight of gravity. We want to keep a sense of spaciousness along the sides of the torso. 2 more breaths. Sweeping up on the inhale. Back to your mat. Pivot off that back heel. Step back. You're back in downward facing dog. Again, right foot steps forward. Left foot grounds. This time you're coming into triangle pose. Take a block if you need one. Left arm stacks above right. We're going to be coming into Pasana, which means you're going to transition to balancing half moon and then binding the aerial leg with the aerial arm. So let's do that step by step. Left hand finds left hip. Bend right knee, step in with left foot, transfer block out ahead of you so it's in line with shoulder. Raise the leg to Ardha Chandrasana. Make contact with your foot. You might need to distort the pose for a moment to find the foot. Then kick back into your hand. Open your chest. Feeling the elements of balance here and how we can equalize ourselves to maintain balance. Restoring Ardha Chandrasana, restoring triangle pose, and then pivoting back to your mat, step back to downward facing dog. Left foot's gonna come forward. Right foot pivots and grounds, left-sided triangle pose. Feel that pose first before you even consider transitioning to balancing half moon. As you're ready, take the aerial hand to the hip, bend the left knee, step in with the right foot, floating into Ardha Chandrasana as you're ready. Again, feel that pose before you consider binding it. Then make contact with right hand and foot. Kick back into the hand, which means you're pressing the foot into the hand. Use the bind to help you open the chest, to rotate the chest, to revolve the chest, to bring it into the sunlight. Keeping the chest open, restoring half moon. Step back to triangle pose. And then sweeping yourself back to downward dog. Inhale, you're going to raise the right leg and step through. Keep off the back heel. Inhale, sweep up to warrior one. Full extension of the back leg, that's important. Very important. Take the arms back, as far back as you can. Lift your gaze. Use the fingertips to create the extension of the sides of the trunk. Keep driving the heel that's off the floor, left heel toward the floor. Keep yourself deep in that right knee bend. Inhale, lengthen forward, touch down, step back and sweep that right leg up in the sky. Take your toes down. Inhale, raise the left leg. Exhale, step through. Keep the right heel lifted with the 90-degree left knee bend, sweeping up to warrior one, modified, of course. Here, because the heel is lifted, we're going to modify it. But compress the whole right leg, front to back. Reach the right heel toward the floor. Open your chest. Tip of the tailbone toward the front body. Soften the jaw, soften the temples, soften the gaze. Come to the top of the in-breath, lengthen yourself forward, touch down, sweep the left leg back up in the sky. Good, stepping those toes down. Walk your toes in. Find your two blocks. Come forward over those blocks. Extend your left leg back. See about extending the arms forward. Touch your blocks. Lower the left foot. And just ragdoll here for a couple breaths. Grabbing elbows, passive arms, empty coat sleeves for arms, whatever works. Back to the blocks. So Ardha Uttanasana means you're in the preparation of Uttanasana. You have a concave or flat lumbar spine. Your legs are straight, your feet are balanced. Take the right leg back now. In order to get those hands up, you need to balance the weight of the hips. So roll some false weight into your right hip point, bring a line of extension up along the left femur bone, drive the femur bone into the hip socket. Use your core for support as well. And then see about extending arms forward. Touch your blocks, float the right foot into place. And again, ragdoll here, passive upper body, still the strong stems of your legs. Okay, dolphin pose. Now we're going to start to really come into more of the shape of forearm balance. We're going to do it one without the wall, the next one with the wall. So the first one, I'm going to face you because I don't need the wall in front of me. I'm going to have you grab your strap, create a loop that when it's placed directly above the elbows, it holds your elbows only as wide as your shoulders. You're containing the elbows, and when you contain the elbows, then as a result, the shoulders broaden. If the elbows get wide, I'll show you, the shoulders get narrow. If the elbows get narrow, the shoulders broaden. And the broad shoulders and the broad upper back is the key ingredient to forearm balance. So the strap, even though if you might not like it or use it every time, it's very good training for the body. Okay, so now look at your hands. Sorry, I'm off camera again. And you're gonna feel lighter on your thumbs and heavier on your pinkies. So your job is to equalize that and try to keep the inner wrist down. The inner wrist down, you can see the bone of the wrist. You can see that the outer wrist comes down lower, the inner wrist comes up higher. Your job is to try to make that more level. That's gonna help you. So that's one action in the arms. The other action in the arms is you wanna keep the upper arm spiraling from the inner arm out. So if you take your hand and rotate the arm from inside out, you want to kind of create that effect on your own, somehow magic yourself into rotating the arms. And as you develop a yoga practice, you develop sensitivities to be able to do these kind of things. So for a while, they might just be in your imagination, but that's how it starts. So let it start in your imagination. If you can't possibly imagine moving flesh, just start with thinking about moving flesh. So that's the shape of the arms and hands. For Dolphin Pose, the knees start under the hips, curl your toes under, extend your legs. And then the work really is to keep the shoulder blades in as you start to creep into a more inverted spine. And that's really much of the work. And if you don't go into full inversion, this is between downward dog and this pose, that's where you want to spend your time developing the pose. So that's very exhausting and tiring. Take a moment to come down before we give it another attempt. And then put things in place, your hand positions. So your hands should be in the downward dog position, middle fingers forward. The thumbs aren't their full stretching distance away from the index. They're about half of that. The inner wrists are doing their best to stay down. And then you're winding the upper arms from inside out to broaden the chest. Knees are under hips, curl the toes under, exhale, extend the legs, move the shoulder blades in, keep the shoulder blades in, and walk yourself in. Okay, come down, take your strap off of yourself. Take either hand, it doesn't matter, put it behind your back and pat yourself on the back. Good job. Okay, so now we're going to try it facing the wall. And instead of the strap, because sometimes the strap can get in the way, you're going to use a block. You're going to work with the wide, low aspect of the block. You're going to put your hands into the block, and I'll show you facing the camera. So that the tip of the index and the tip of the thumb touch the block. What I don't want you to do is have the block opening the thumb joint away from the index full capacity, because again, that's not healthy. So it's more like you're pinching the edge of the block and there's space between the block corner and the webbing of your hand. I hope that makes sense. So you have that position with your block. Your block is to the wall. Hopefully you don't have a lot of quarter round in your house and your block stays put. That's essential. But the block is going to keep the space that we want between the hands. Elbows as well. We want to keep them under the shoulders. Curl your toes under and start to walk in. Raising one leg at a time. Keep the shoulder blades moving in. Take the foot down. Try the other leg. Try not to tilt the hips and keep both legs straight. Bring the toes down, rest the knees, sit back for child before you make a second attempt. Okay, we're going to make a second attempt. And then before we make our full attempt, we're going to actually try handstand, because it does inform forearm balance. As a different inversion, but as a similar inversion. So you make your second attempt with the block, with raising each leg. Inner wrist down, elbows are narrower than they want to be. Knees start under hips. Curl the toes under. Exhale, extend, walk in. You might try this someday if you have a friend or a person at home. They're going to push in on your shoulder blades, just giving you that little bit of an assist. Raising a leg. Raising the other leg. Good. Go ahead and take a rest. Sit back. Put your block aside. For full arm balance, we always use a wall. You can start with your hands down and your heels lifted. And what I like to teach for those of you that haven't done it before or aren't as confident is you're going to pick a foot. You usually have a dominant one, so just kind of sense which foot wants to stay down. You're going to raise the other leg and start little hops. Little hops. Don't expect to go anywhere initially, just explore space with little hops. Okay, and then take a rest, because the last thing you want to do is try to invert when you're exhausted. So the next attempt, you'll take your little hops, and if you feel like it, you'll kick up. You'll try to throw your legs at the wall and kick up and stick the pose. If not, just do the little hops and come back and rest. And this is not a full a handstand class. At some point we can do that, but there's a lot of ways you can explore handstand. So today is not going to be that full variety. So if these aren't working for you, just know that there's other options to find your handstand. So you can come in from downward dog, or you can come in from more of a standing uttanasana, but the heels are raised. Little hops. And then you'll make bigger hops, and eventually you do go up. And it's good to feel that true clean line of the handstand, because like I said before, forearm balance is not a back bend, but it has a potential to distort into one. So we really want to feel that true clean line of handstand as a way to kind of make an impression on the body that forearm balance is very similarly a true clean line. It's not supposed to be a back bend, but when you do go into forearm balance, you'll kind of see what I mean. There's a potential to feel like you're arching your back. Okay, so I like to use a block and a strap. And if you'd like to try that too, you can. Otherwise, if you know what you like to use for forearm balance, you can do that. And if you have no idea, I do recommend more support. So you can do what I'm doing. By the way, if you're on your menstrual cycle, it's never a good idea to do inversions, and you can modify any inversion with substitute poses. A good substitute for forearm balance would be like a forearm plank, because then you're not putting the uterus, the pelvis in a reverse state of the downward flow of the cycle. So the idea is not to tip the uterus in the opposite direction, reversing the flow, yada, yada. So just know that inversion practices should be saved for days you're not dealing with that. Okay, so here we go. It's all the same, except you're going to kind of apply that kick up from the forearm position. Your head is not touching the ground, which requires extra effort in the arms. And there's a potential to feel like you're in a back bend, which is why you want to develop a straight line, bringing the heels and hips on the same plane. So what happens when you use a block against the wall is you have space between your hands and the wall, but if your feet come to the wall, then it turns into a back bend. So if you're using a block, you need to attempt at least taking 1 foot at a time away from the wall so you can feel the true clean line. Because it's an entirely different pose if we do a back bend. Then we're heading into Scorpio territory. Scorpion, sorry. Okay. So if you didn't get there, that's okay. You have this recording for life. And hopefully you feel like you have a lot of tools that you can work on this pose. I want you to put yourself in child's pose now. Never continue working on inversions when you're sensing your body, your energy starts to flag. If you come out of an inversion that you've held for some period of time, just stay out and come back again at a later time. Because the inversions usually get messier and sloppier as we start to fade. Come onto your back. Just a little bit of a twist before you find yourself in Shavasana. So with your knees bent, take your feet out to the edges of the mat, your knees come together, hands on your belly, let your knees drift from side to side. And when your knees go one way, your head will go the other. Inhale, center. Exhale, side. Inhale, center. Exhale, side. When you feel like you've wrung out the spine and you're ready to unfold your limbs, you'll come into your Shavasana. And I'm going to leave you here so that you can take Shavasana for the last few moments on your own without interruption. Namaste.